Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, over 60 years ago, in this very city, UNCTAD emerged from a simple truth. Development is not automatic. Development requires deliberate action. It requires policies, institutions, and investment that serve people, and that deliver justice for the developing world, for trade and through trade. But trade alone is not enough. Trade also requires institutions that set parameters, rules, and a level playing field. And it requires finance, investments, and technology that can help all countries participate and prosper. Excellencies, after decades, UNCTAD's many achievements have helped steer the global trade system towards justice. From the creation of the least developed countries category, to the adoption of the principles and objectives for a new international economic order, to the establishment of the Common Fund for Commodities, and let's not forget your ongoing work to close gaps in the global trading system and propose concrete solutions. Your long-standing calls on reform the international financial architecture, and your creation of the Global Crisis Response Group in 2022, led by Secretary-General Greenspan, to keep trade flowing in the midst of war. Today, as UNCTAD returns home for its 16th conference, we are reminded of the urgent need to continue shaping the future. We face a whirlwind of change. 3/4 of global growth now comes from the developing world. Services trade is surging, growing 9% last year. Digital commerce crosses borders at the speed of light. Frontier technologies are adding trillions to the world economy, and regional trade agreements have multiplied sevenfold since the 90s. And South-South collaboration is increasing through value chains, technology transfer, and cross-border investments. But in this radically different new world, some things sadly remain the same. Developing countries continue to be shortchanged. Uncertainty is growing. Investment is retreating. Supply chains are in turmoil. And trade barriers are rising, with some least developed countries facing extortionate tariffs of 40%, despite representing barely 1% of global trade flows. Maybe protectionism might be, in some situations, inevitable, but at least it should be rational. While services trade is growing, we see a rising risk of trade wars for goods. And military expenditure trends show that we increasingly are investing more in deaths than in people's prosperity and well-being. Meanwhile, geopolitical divisions, inequalities, the climate crisis, and new unprotected conflicts are rippling across the global economy. Global debt has soared. Poverty and hunger are still with us, and the international financial architecture is not providing an adequate safety net for the developing countries. And the rules-based trading system is at the risk of derailment. Excellencies, the outcome document you are crafting will be a blueprint to respond to these headwinds. I see 4 areas of action. First, we need a fair global trade and investment system. In 2024, countries adopted the Pact for the Future, which includes a global recommitment to the multilateral trading system. The Pact aspires to promote export-led growth in developing countries through preferential trade access and special and differentiated treatment, as well as vital reforms for the World Trade Organization. We must help countries move beyond commodity dependence and build links to global value chains and drive jobs and prosperity. And we need new tools that allow developing countries to compete and benefit from the explosive growth in services trade. Second, financing. For many developing countries, we see that they are victims of limited fiscal space, slow growth, and the debt crisis. 3.4 billion people now live in countries that spend more on debt servicing than on health or education. At June's Financing for Development conference in Seville, leaders emerged with a consensus to unlock more finance for developing countries, to strengthen their capacity to mobilize domestic resources, to triple the lending power of multilateral development banks, making them bigger and bolder, to leverage more private finance, and to ease debt burdens with new instruments to reduce borrowing costs and risks, including from climate shocks, and speed up support for countries facing debt distress. Simultaneously, to reform global financial institutions so that they better represent today's world and the needs of developing countries. Third, technology. Technology, high-quality data, and innovations can drive economies forward. But not every country has the access or technology that is required to compete. The Global Digital Compact, adopted last year, includes a number of actions to close the digital divide and ensure that frontier technologies like artificial intelligence and blockchain become more accessible to all countries, not just rich ones. Excellences, quatrièmement, nous devons aligner les politiques commerciales avec nos objectifs climatiques et veiller à ce que le commerce soutienne une action climatique ambitieuse et une transition juste. Cela demande d'intégrer pleinement les stratégies commerciales dans les nouveaux plans climatiques nationaux qui doivent être présentés en amont de la conférence des Nations Unies sur les changements climatiques au Brésil le mois prochain. Cela implique d'aider les pays en développement à tirer parti de la puissance et du potentiel illimité des énergies renouvelables, notamment par un soutien financier et technique accru. Cela commence par l'élaboration d'une feuille de route crédible, nous permettant de mobiliser d'ici 2035 1 300 milliards de dollars par an en faveur de l'action climatique dans les pays en développement. Et cela suppose de rendre le système de production et de commerce plus juste pour les pays en développement. Trop de pays et de communautés en développement ne bénéficient pas de la révolution énergétique mondiale, et ce même lorsqu'ils possèdent de vastes réserves de minéraux critiques indispensables à la transition. L'année dernière, j'ai créé le groupe chargé de la question des minéraux critiques pour la transition énergétique, qui a pour mission d'élaborer un ensemble de principes directeurs visant à permettre aux populations locales de tirer profit des ressources qui se trouvent sur leur sol dans un esprit d'équité, de transparence, de durabilité et de respect des droits humains. Je remercie le UNCTAD de participer à cette initiative importante et j'invite les gouvernements, les entreprises et les membres de la société civile à collaborer avec l'ONU pour mettre ces principes en œuvre. Excellences, la UNCTAD est née de la volonté des pays en développement de faire entendre leur voix dans un système conçu sans eux. Depuis, vous les avez accompagnés et avez soutenu leurs appels en faveur d'une plus grande équité. Nous devons poursuivre ce travail essentiel et veiller à ce que tous les pays puissent tirer parti du potentiel offert par le commerce et le développement pour faire avancer leurs économies. Et je vous remercie.